Hi, Chris Kuzmal here with more APCSA exam prep review. For this, we're talking about Unit 5, Section 1 in classes for visibility. And what I want to tell you about is there's a set of visibility settings that the exam expects and requires. And that's different than what's possible. I'm going to show you what's expected and required, and then I'm going to show you some defiant things that you need to be sure to not do on the test. But I think knowing what you're not allowed to do will help you understand why they have you do what to do. When you declare a class, you should declare it public. That makes it visible beyond the package. They don't ever talk about packages to speak of in the APCS curriculum, but that's why. A given field in a class should be declared private. Always declare your fields private. You can declare it public. We'll see an example of that in a moment. So I've created a couple of fields here. They're both private, which means you cannot access them from outside the class. A constructor, the exam is going to want you to always declare your constructors public. As it turns out, it's possible to declare a constructor private, and it's even potentially useful, but they don't want you to do it. So unless you're feeling defiant, don't do it. So whether for a class is always public, a field is always private, and a constructor is always public. But a method can be either public or private. If you want to have a method that's accessible outside the class, then the exam expects you to make it public. If you want to have a method that's not accessible outside the class, the exam expects you to figure out that it needs to be private. So for example, you might have a class that sets a password, which is something that's maybe high security, and you only want it to happen inside methods that are running inside the class. And you don't want someone who has access to an instance of the class to be able to change the password. At the same time, you want everyone to be able to perhaps get the ID corresponding to a particular instance. So let's look at main and see how this happens. So in main, we have a different class, and it's accessing the constructor for an instance of a visibility. That's what's highlighted right here. And that's okie dokie because it is a public, the constructor is public, and so that makes it possible to access it. And that's the story for visibility. Now let's take a quick look over at disobey. Okay, here I'm disobeying in almost every possible way. I can't fail to make my class public. That's the one thing that I can't get countered. But it is possible to write code that makes a field public. It is possible to even make a constructor that is private. And in fact, it's also possible to make a class that's not defined as public, but you can't make it explicitly private at the top level. This again has to do with packages. So there's your introduction to visibility. It's a pretty short story. Make your classes public, make your fields private, make your constructors public, and then you have to make decisions about whether to make methods public or private.